Investment. It's the golden word of politics, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't really matter which party's speaking. You're almost guaranteed to hear this one phrase. We must grow the economy, and the only way to do that is to attract wealthy investors and foreign investment.
It's almost a reflex, isn't it? But what if that word is actually a trap?
That is the big question. In fact, you could make a very strong argument that what we call investment is actually a mechanism for moving money out of the country, not bringing it in.
Which sounds completely backwards.
So today, we're going to look under the bonnet of that statement, because when you actually dig into what wealth and growth even are, that whole idea, it starts to fall apart. It seems to rely on a fundamental misunderstanding.
Or perhaps a convenient misunderstanding. We're going to try and unravel why the UK government is so obsessed with courting wealthy foreign investors. And we're going to challenge this pervasive narrative that the British state is somehow too incompetent to invest in itself. And to do that, you have to start with the most basic concept of all, which is value. Because value isn't, a natural thing like a rock or a tree. It's a social construct. I think most people use money and wealth interchangeably. If I have £1 million in my bank account, I'm wealthy, right?
In common conversation, yes, of course, you can buy things. But in economics, or at least in the real economy, they're very different. And this distinction is the key to understanding why Britain's in the position it's in.
Okay, so break it down for me. What's the difference?
Well, value is socially determined, but wealth, real wealth is stuff. It's tangible, right? It's homes, machines, factories, infrastructure, energy systems, tools, or it's the capacity to deliver services, healthcare, education, the ability to fix a train or cure a patient. That is wealth. It's the physical capacity to do things.
So the actual physical things and the capabilities we have as a society, if we have a lot of factories and smart doctors, we're wealthy.
Precisely. Money, on the other hand, is just a claim on those things. It's a ticketing system.
A ticketing system. And so money is just the claim check for a slice of that pie. It's a social construct. If the Bank of England prints £1 trillion tomorrow, we have more money. But we don't have a single extra house. We don't have a single extra doctor. We just have more claim checks chasing the same amount of stuff.
Which is how you get inflation.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the uncomfortable truth. At any specific moment in time, the amount of real stuff in Britain is finite. The pie is a fixed size.
And money is just how we slice it up.
It's the tool we use to decide who gets which slice. Now here's the scary part. If one group, let's say the top 1%, starts holding way more of those claim checks, those pounds, than they did before.
Their ability to claim the real stuff goes up.
Massively. Which means everyone else's claim checks.
Buy less.
They have to buy less.
Yeah.
If I take a bigger slice of a fixed pie, your slice gets smaller.
Real growth should mean we are producing more coats, more houses, better food yields, more efficient transport. But imagine the total pool of wealth, all the real stuff in the UK, grows by 2% this year.
Sounds good. On the news, that's a win.
But what if the share of that wealth claimed by the top 1% of society grows by, say, 5%?
Mathematics. Wait, let me think. If the pie grows by 2, but one person's slice grows by 5.
Then there is statistically less pie left for everyone else.
So it's a zero-sum game.
When we are talking about finite resources like land or housing, yes, it has to be. Even if the pie is technically bigger, if the wealthy increase their claim on resources faster than the resources are being created, your slice has to get smaller. You are becoming relatively poor, even in a growing economy. And this brings us to the first big illusion we need to shatter, GDP, gross domestic product.
Right, the national scorecard for growth.
We use it as our main measure of success, but just exchanging money, just buying and selling existing things often gets counted as economic activity.
Okay, so give me an example. How can you have activity without creating anything new?
The housing market is the perfect one. Let's say I sell you a house for £1 million. A year later, you sell it back to me for $2 million.
Right.
On paper, GDP has gone up. We've had growth. The numbers on the spreadsheet are bigger. But has any new wealth actually been created?
No. It's the same house. It hasn't magically grown an extra bedroom. It's just more expensive.
Exactly. There's still only one house. That isn't growth, that's asset inflation. Real growth is when we produce more stuff, more services, or we produce the same things more efficiently. That expands the total pool of wealth for everyone.
This feels like a really crucial distinction because it takes us to that magic word politicians love so much, Investment.
Ah, yes. Investment.
That word does so much heavy lifting in every speech. We need investment. We're investing in the future.
It does a lot of dishonest work, to be frank. We need to demystify it. Because there are two completely different activities that get lumped under that one name. Let's call them Type A and Type B.
Okay, so what's Type A?
Type A is building real capacity. This is when you use money to, say, build a new factory, train up a workforce, repair a bridge, develop some new software. You are creating things that make society more capable.
That's what people think they mean, I suppose. Cranes in the sky, new train lines.
It is. But then you have Type B, and Type B is just moving the claims around, buying existing shares, trading property without improving it, speculating on currencies.
The casino stuff, basically.
It sounds like ticket touting.
That is a perfect analogy. If I buy a concert ticket for £100 and sell it to you for 500, I've made a profit. I've had a return on my investment. But have I added any value? Did I make the band play better?
No, you just took 400 quid off me.
Exactly. I inserted myself as a middleman to extract value. And a huge chunk of what we call investment in the UK is just that. It's economic ticket touting.
It's just betting on the price of things.
It's betting on the price of the tickets. And it doesn't create a simple new thing.
It doesn't increase the number of real items or services. It just reallocates who owns what and who gets the income from it. And because the financial world is so complex, derivatives, offshore holdings, leverage, it all acts as a kind of camouflage. We see billions in transaction volume and we think it means billions in construction.
And it usually doesn't.
It usually doesn't.
They treat Type B as if it were Type A.
So the betting gets the same respect as the building.
The same tax breaks, the same respect,
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you look at the 2008 crash or the housing crisis right now, what is it? It's the paper claims, the Type B stuff, drifting miles away from the reality of actual goods and services.
A mountain of claims on a molehill of real stuff.
And that leads us to the second mechanism. We need to talk about effective tax drag. It's a term everyone in Britain should know. Effective tax drag is the proportion of a person's total wealth that is lost every single year to all taxes combined.
All of them.
Not just income tax, but VAT, council tax, national insurance, fuel duty, everything.
So not just what comes out of your paycheck, but everything you pay just to exist in society.
Correct. And to understand this, let's compare two hypothetical people. Let's take an average British citizen. Let's call her Sarah. She's a nurse. Her wealth is almost entirely tied up in her wages, and maybe, if she's lucky, a bit of savings.
Right. So almost every penny Sarah earns is liable for income tax and national insurance before she even sees it.
And then, almost every penny she spends attracts VAT. She buys fuel to get to work. Fuel duty. She buys clothes. VAT.
And council tax.
Council tax is highly regressive. That means it takes a bigger percentage of your wealth if you have less of it. A small flat often pays a disproportionately high amount compared to a mansion relative to its value.
So when you add it all up,
If you run the mathematics, someone with, say, £30,000 in net wealth might lose 8 to 10% of that wealth every single year to this tax drag. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a huge hole in the bottom. Now compare Sarah to someone with £3 billion. Let's call him Lord Sterling.
the super rich.
His wealth isn't in wages. He probably pays himself a tiny salary to avoid income tax. His wealth is in unrealized assets, capital gains, shares, land, art, commercial property.
Explain unrealized for us, just so we're all on the same page.
It means the value has gone up, but he hasn't sold it yet. In the UK, if your share portfolio goes up by £100 million this year, you pay zero tax on that gain until you sell.
And the very wealthy, they often don't sell. They just borrow against their assets to fund their lifestyle. The ultra-rich use a strategy that's often called buy, borrow, die.
Buy, borrow, die. Explain that.
Okay, step one, you buy assets, stock, whatever. Step two, when you need cash, say, to buy a yacht, you don't sell the asset. You walk into a bank and you say, I have 100 million in stock. Lend me 10 million at 2% interest using the stock as collateral.
Oh. And a loan isn't income.
A loan is not income, so it's not taxed. You get the cash tax-free.
And the interest rate you're paying on that loan is way lower than the rate your stock is growing, so you're still making money on the deal.
Exactly. And step three is die. When you eventually pass away, there are all these mechanisms like trusts that can effectively reset the tax clock or minimize inheritance tax to almost nothing. So that original gain, it might never be taxed, ever.
That is the old buy, borrow, die strategy.
But he has to buy food and clothes. He pays VAT on that.
He does. But think about the proportion. Even if he buys a new suit every day and eats caviar for breakfast, his consumption is a microscopic fraction of his 3 billion pound wealth. So VAT barely touches his overall pile.
So when you add up all the tax load Sterling pays, even if he's being honest and not using offshore havens, what's his tax drag?
Usually less than 0.5% of his total wealth.
Wow. Okay, let that sink in. Sarah, the nurse, loses up to 10% of her wealth a year to the system. The billionaire loses 0.5%.
And this leads to a formula that explains the widening gap. It's basically net wealth change equals asset growth minus tax drag.
Break that down.
Simple. If you're rich, your assets, your type B investments, usually grow at maybe 4, 5, or 6% a year. Your tax drag is only 0.5%. So 5% growth minus 0.5% tax means you get 4.5% richer every single year. Automatically.
You don't have to do anything.
Nothing. You're running up an escalator.
Right.
But for Sarah, her savings might grow a little bit, maybe 1 or 2% in a good ISA, but her tax drag is 10%. She is mathematically destined to lose ground relative to the system. She's running up a down escalator that is moving faster than she is.
That is stark. It explains why working hard doesn't feel like it pays off anymore. But surely this has been happening for a long time. Why are we only really feeling the bite of it now? In the 90s or early 2000s, people felt like they were getting ahead.
And that is where the illusion comes in. Historically, this extraction, this unfairness in the mathematics, was masked by high overall growth. The rich took a bigger slice of the pie every year, but because the pie itself was growing rapidly and crucially was tied to real production, the poor still got a slightly larger crumb than they did the year before.
So everyone felt like they were moving forward, even if the gap was widening. Sarah got a new TV, maybe a holiday, so she felt okay.
Precisely. It created the illusion that inequality doesn't matter. But that illusion breaks when growth slows down, or when growth becomes concentrated only in asset prices like housing, rather than real production.
Which is where we are now. The pie stopped growing for most people.
And so now you can feel the fork stabbing your hand when someone tries to take your slice. The extraction becomes visible, because the poor are no longer seeing absolute gains. They are seeing their quality of life degrade.
But hold on, I can hear the counter-argument already. You hear it on panel shows constantly. Someone suggests taxing wealth, and a think tank expert pops up and says, but the rich pay all the taxes. Doesn't the top 10% of earners pay 60% of all income tax?
The classic statistic, yes.
It sounds like a slam dunk argument.
It's a very clever piece of framing because it sounds precise, it uses official data, and it feels intuitive. But it relies on 3 little tricks, 3 sleights of hand, to hide the truth.
Okay, break them down, because that 60% figure is used to shut this debate down all the time.
First, the big switch. They switch the conversation from wealth to income.
The stock versus the flow.
Exactly. Wealth is the stock, the big pile of assets. Income is the flow, the little trickle into the pile. A billionaire might pay himself a salary of 50,000 pounds.
Right, just enough to live on paper.
He pays his income tax on that 50 grand, maybe a lot relative to that salary. But at the same time, his share portfolio grew by 50 million pounds that year.
And that 50 million
is tax-free until he sells.
Yeah.
And even then, it's capital gains tax, which is lower than income tax. Second, it ignores the percentage of wealth. If we look at tax paid as a percentage of net worth, the picture completely flips. The top 10% pay a far, far lower percentage of their actual wealth to support the country than a teacher or a cleaner does.
And the third point,
it just conveniently ignores all the other taxes. That 60% of income tax stat doesn't include VAT, doesn't include council tax, doesn't include fuel duty.
The taxes that hammer normal people's spending power.
The taxes you pay just to exist.
It really is a masterclass in using a real statistic to tell a completely misleading story.
It is.
So we have a system that favors asset owners over workers. But this brings us back to the government's role. Because the standard line, and I hear this constantly from every major party, is that the UK government is incompetent. We can't have the state running businesses. They'd mess it up. It's inefficient. It's bloated.
This is one of the most contradictory narratives in British politics. It's actually quite maddening when you dissect it.
It drives me mad, too, because in the very same breath, they tell us we must attract foreign investment. We need the adults in the room to come and run things for us.
Yes. But who are these foreign investors?
Very often they're foreign governments.
That's it.
Right. This is the part that always gets me. We have the French state EDF running a huge chunk of our energy infrastructure.
We have the Chinese state investing in nuclear infrastructure and water. We have Dutch and German state railways running our transport lines. The Hong Kong Metro runs the Elizabeth line.
So, follow the logic here. The narrative implies that the French government is competent, the Chinese government is competent, but the British government is uniquely, genetically incompetent. It implies that British people are somehow fundamentally unable to run their own industries, which is obviously absurd. I mean, look at Norway. They have a state-owned oil company. They didn't sell it off to attract investment. They kept it. And they used the profits to build a sovereign wealth fund that owns, and this is a real statistic, about 1.5% of all the shares in the world.
Wait, 1.5% of all global shares?
Yeah.
Owned by the Norwegian people through their state?
Yes. That is state ownership working.
Right.
Or look at Singapore's housing model, or France's energy independence. The idea that public ownership doesn't work is just empirically false.
We're looking at a system that is structured, quite deliberately, to channel wealth from the many to the few, and often from the domestic economy to foreign owners.
And the narrative of incompetence, that the state can't do anything, is just the cover story.
It's the mechanism that protects that channel. The narrative of incompetence isn't an economic reality, it's a political choice. It's designed to justify the privatization of public assets. It creates a rationale for handing over Type A assets to Type B investors.
This connects back to that attracting investment idea. Because when we say we want to attract foreign capital, the news reports make it sound like charity. Like they're coming here to do us a massive favor. Oh, thank you for building our wind farm.
They are not charities. They invest to extract profit. That is the only reason. And we need to look at the deal we're actually getting.
So let's look at the deal. The UK supplies the land. We supply the workers who are educated by the UK taxpayer. We provide the infrastructure, the roads, the internet. We provide the customers, the British public, paying their bills. We take the environmental risk if something leaks.
And the foreign investor. They provide the initial capital, but then they take the profit and send it abroad.
That doesn't sound like investment. That sounds like being taken for a ride.
It's wealth extraction. Now imagine if the UK government did the investing itself, Type A investment. Then the profits would stay in the UK.
Sure.
That money could circulate. It could fund hospitals, schools, lower energy bills, or higher wages.
Instead of flowing out to shareholders in Paris or Beijing or the Cayman Islands.
Exactly.
The profits from your electricity bill in London might be funding schools or hospitals in Paris.
It hurts to hear that put so plainly.
If the UK government invested in itself, if we did what Norway does, those profits would stay here. They could fund our hospitals, lower our bills, raise wages. Instead, we've turned the UK into a rental economy. We're tenants in our own country.
But whenever anyone suggests changing this, maybe taxing wealth more or even nationalizing something, we get the big threat, capital flight.
The ultimate trump card, lower my tax or I'll move.
And it works. It's a terrifying threat. Nobody wants to be the one who crashes the economy because the job creators left.
But again, we have to ask what actually leaves. Remember, Type A and Type B. A real business, a Type A investment, is sticky. If you have a car factory in Sunderland with a skilled workforce, you can't just move that to the Cayman Islands overnight.
But surely if the money leaves, we lose something.
We might lose some liquidity, perhaps.
So what leaves is the mobile wealth.
The paper claims. The hot money. But here's the thought. If that money is only here to extract value without creating much in return, is losing it really a loss?
Or is it the removal of a drain on the economy?
Exactly. It's about calling the bluff. And one way to do that is with something like an exit tax.
How would that work?
The rationale is simple. You benefited from this country to build your wealth. You used our legal system, our educated workforce, our roads. If you want to take all that wealth and leave for good, there's a final bill to pay. It changes the whole calculation.
It stops governments being held hostage.
Precisely, because right now, the idea that government can't run business is treated like an economic law, like gravity, but it's not. It's an ideology.
An ideology designed to do what?
To protect private wealth extraction. Think about how privatization often works. A public service is deliberately underfunded. It's forced to fail. Then, the private sector is presented as the only possible savior.
And once it's private, prices go up, services are cut, profits soar, and they say, see, it's more efficient.
When really they're just running it for a different goal. They're not more efficient at delivering a service. They're more efficient at extracting money.
This has been, a bit infuriating, but incredibly clarifying. It feels like we've been taught to look at the economy completely upside down.
We have. We've been trained to cheer for investment without ever asking what kind and for whose benefit. We've been taught to worry about the national debt while we sell off the family silver to pay for groceries.
Why isn't this on the front page of every newspaper? Why are we always talking about income tax brackets and never about wealth tax?
Because complexity is the ultimate camouflage. The system is designed to be boring, it's designed to be confusing. Trusts, shell companies, offshore accounts, tax drag makes people's eyes glaze over.
It feels like you need a PhD just to understand your payslip sometimes, let alone the national economy.
And that is by design. If you don't understand how the machine works, you can't demand that it be fixed. But there is also a deep moral trap we fall into.
A moral trap.
Think about the stories we tell. Income tax debates are about effort. I worked hard for this money, why should the government take it? That resonates with everyone, from the cleaner to the CEO.
Yeah, nobody likes seeing their hard work taxed. It feels visceral.
It feels like theft, exactly. But wealth debates, those are about ownership. I control this resource. The wealthy fight tooth and nail to keep the debate focused on income and effort because it justifies inequality. I have more because I worked harder.
When the reality for the billionaire is often, I have more because I own a resource that grew in value while I slept.
Correct. The ownership narrative exposes the structural unfairness. If you frame the debate around wealth, people start asking, why does that person pay a lower percentage of their worth than I do? And once that question is asked, the whole system starts to look very shaky.
So keeping the focus on income is basically a shield to protect the status quo.
It's the primary defense mechanism of the modern economy.
Wow.
But this is the thing that worries me. If we don't do this, if we keep letting wealth accumulate untaxed, we get into the situation where the government is always broke. The broken Britain feeling. Potholes, NHS waiting lists, crumbling schools.
And this is the final deadly loop. This is the part that makes the economist in me want to scream.
Go on.
The government needs resources. If it refuses to tax the accumulated wealth at the top, what's its only other option?
It has to borrow the money.
It borrows. And who does it borrow from?
Well, the people who have the money to lend, the wealthy.
The markets?
Yeah.
The pension funds? The billionaires? The government issues bonds, and the wealthy buy those bonds.
Wait, hang on. Walk me through this slowly. So instead of taxing the wealth to pay for the NHS, the government borrows the exact same wealth to pay for the NHS.
Yes. And then it collects taxes from working people, from you and me via VAT and income tax, to pay interest to the wealthy for lending us back the money that was extracted from our own economy in the first place.
That sounds insane. It sounds like a scam.
The government taxes the working class to pay interest to the wealthy for money the wealthy should have arguably paid in taxes in the first place. That is actually infuriating.
And the consequence is the state gets weaker. A state that spends X amount of wealth to run hospitals must reclaim X amount in taxes. If it doesn't, it has to cut services. The rich have a growing claim on construction workers, doctors, and engineers, leaving fewer of them for the public sector to employ. The state is literally priced out of its own economy.
It's a wealth transfer machine, disguised as public finance. It takes spending power from the average taxpayer and just hands it directly to the bondholder. It weakens the state. When you hear about debt sustainability or we have to make cuts, what that really means is we have chosen to prioritize paying interest to asset holders over providing services to citizens.
And it creates that whole narrative of we can't afford anything. There's no magic money tree.
But there's always a magic money tree for interest payments. That's the choice. If a state spends money, it has to get that money from the economy. If you don't reclaim it through taxes, you have to borrow it. And borrowing is just deferred taxation that benefits the lender. We've built a system that compounds ownership upwards while taxing survival downwards. And unless we address the wealth issue, not income, wealth, that feeling is not going to go away. What happens if we just keep going the way we are?
Well, if nothing changes, things are only going to get worse.
Okay.
Inequality will keep rising and public services will continue to decline. And that's going to lead to more instability.
Eventually, something's going to snap.
Yeah.
People are going to demand change, and it could be pretty radical change.
Governments might be forced to take drastic measures.
Like?
Much higher wealth taxes.
Okay.
Maybe even seizing assets.
Oh, wow.
So the wealthy have a choice to make. They can support moderate reforms now. Things like fairer taxes and more investment in public services. Or they can risk facing much more extreme consequences later. Are we really saying we're not clever enough? That we can't design a system that keeps the good parts of economic competition, innovation, progress, efficiency, but ditches the parts that lead to wealth extraction, falling quality, and declining living standards for so many.
Yeah, is this really the best we can do?
Do we honestly believe the only way to foster better ideas or new technologies is to let a tiny few accumulate vast, unimaginable wealth while almost everyone else is asked to just work harder for less and less? The idea that we need a tiny class of billionaires for prosperity is, frankly, a self-serving story they like to tell. Real growth should mean better health for people, better education, secure, affordable housing, a stable climate, a cleaner environment, not just bigger profits for energy companies or landlords. We need to measure what actually matters.
Well-being, sustainability, equality.
Yeah, and crucially, public wealth.
So to just summarize for everyone listening, the system as it stands is basically structured to channel wealth upwards and outwards, while framing any kind of public ownership as inherently inefficient.
And the mathematics of our tax system, that tax drag, locks it all in place.
If we zoom out, we've unraveled the definitions. Money isn't wealth. Most investment is just gambling on asset prices. And the incompetent state is a cover story for foreign asset stripping. Where does that leave us?
It leaves us with a choice, really. We can continue to believe the myth that Britain is a helpless little island that needs the kindness of strangers to keep the lights on, or we can realize that we actually have the capacity, the skills, and the internal wealth to run our own affairs.
It sounds like it's a confidence issue as much as an economic one. The money used to build infrastructure is just numbers on a screen until the concrete is poured. The UK can generate those numbers just as well as anyone else.
And keep the wealth here.
The next time you hear a politician going on about the global race to attract investment,
I would just ask this. If the French state and the Norwegian state can run profitable businesses on British soil, is there any rational reason at all why the British public can't do the same?
And if we did, just imagine where all that wealth would go.
It certainly wouldn't be going offshore. It would be building real wealth right here at home. If the economy is a machine, who is it actually built to serve? Is it the people who make the wealth, the nurses, the builders, the engineers, or is it the people who own the claims on it? Thanks for joining us.
And we hope you found it insightful. And be sure to subscribe to the Karma Pini channel.